12 most shocking flash floods that destroyed everything. A flash flood is a type of natural disaster that can occur with little or no warning and leave a path of destruction in its wake. Well, when it rains, it often brings with it a force of nature that is so destructive that it can level entire towns in a matter of minutes. In this video, we'll take a look back at some of the most devastating flash floods that have occurred throughout history and count them down from 1 to 12. Get ready to experience some footage that will truly stop your heart. It was so powerful that it left a trail of ruin in its wake, taking everything in its path with it as it went. The unrelenting force of the water was able to carry away anything in its path, including automobiles. The flood was able to sweep away everything in its path. Those who had previously called the areas that were affected by the flooded home described the aftermath of the disaster as being comparable to waking up in a nightmare. It was impossible to navigate the roadways since they were obscured by a layer of mud and debris that was at least 1 foot thick. The flood was brought on by persistent and persistently heavy rainfall over a period of many days. This resulted in rivers and streams exceeding their banks, which in turn led to flash floods that caused significant damage to a variety of properties, including houses, businesses, and infrastructure. Rainfall that was in excess of normal levels produced the flood. The flood waters were so furious and powerful that they were able to destroy entire structures, including automobiles, trucks, and other vehicles that were carried away by the surging water. The construction of that massive bridge across that wide river had been a phenomenal demonstration of the intellect and talent of the human race. Yet when the flood arrived, it became abundantly clear that man was helpless in the face of the majesty of the natural world. The river had been steadily climbing for several days, being fueled by the incessant rainfall that had turned it from a peaceful canal into a raging torrent that posed a risk to the city's inhabitants. The force of the stream was so strong that it carried away everything in its path, from entire buildings to uprooted trees and everything in between. The bridge began to sag under the weight of the traffic as the water level rose, which caused the bridge to eventually collapse. The groaning and twisting of the supports of the structure led to the swift collapse of the structure, and it was quickly covered by the water after that. The water that is draining down the mountains is so furious that it is destroying all the objects that are located down there, regardless of whether they are buildings or trees. The disruption that sudden floods inflict is just too much to bear. Seeing how things turn out is truly a dismal experience. The force of the floodwaters was sufficient to utterly destroy the hotel and convert it into shattered pieces. As a result, the hotel was reduced to ruins. According to the testimonies that were offered by the witnesses, the water that was coming in from the flood surged in with such power that it resembled a gigantic wave that encompassed the complete structure. And the force of the water was so tremendous that it not only demolished the hotel, but it also carried away everything in its path, including automobiles, trees, and boulders. The massive flash flood swept down, carrying with it a significant quantity of forest debris and wood from the surrounding area. The water was dirty and cloudy, thick and churning with ferocity all around. The waves continued to grow higher and higher, crashing against buildings and sweeping away everything in their path. The once tranquil streets were transformed into raging rivers, and the residents were able to hear the thunder of the water as it pushed forward in an unrelenting and ruthless manner. The repercussions might be catastrophic and even fatal when Mother Nature decides to let loose and do what she wants. People in the town watched in fear as floodwaters made their way into the community and the waves became higher and higher, eventually slamming through the buildings and sweeping away everything in their path. The streets, which were once peaceful, had turned into raging rivers, and people could hear the water roaring as it pushed forward, never stopping and never giving up. This poor thing. It's very saddening to watch floods causing inconvenience to the living, and it's more disheartening when animals get trapped. They can't speak or ask for help. Animals are especially susceptible to harm during flash floods because they are frequently taken by surprise by the swiftly rising water levels. The predicament can become more dangerous for an elephant if it becomes trapped in a flash flood. Elephants are not naturally equipped to swim for extended periods of time, so therefore they could perish if they are forced to do so. The bridge seems old, but that doesn't mean that the water is any less powerful. The furious hit of the water made the bridge flow away with no time. This is just insane. Wooden bridges are more susceptible to being destroyed by flash floods because they're more likely to be carried away by the swift water. It's possible for persons living in the nearby area to experience severe disturbance, as well as a risk if a bridge is destroyed because of floodwaters. The increasing flood would uproot and disperse a large number of trees, leaving behind a landscape that would be littered with debris and completely unrecognizable compared to its previous state. As the water level continues to rise, the ground beneath the trees will become saturated, which will lead to the collapse of even more trees, which will then be carried away by the moving water. The sheer force of the water would take vast amounts of debris along with it, including downed trees, branches, and other plant materials, which would create a flow that was chaotic and destructive. As the water level continues to rise, the ground beneath the trees will become saturated, which will cause an even greater number of trees to fall over and be swept away by the current. The force of the water would carry vast amounts of debris along with it, including downed trees, branches, and other plant materials, which would create a flow that was chaotic and destructive. The flood's effects would be felt far beyond the boundaries of the forest itself. The waves are so scary. If the water level rises, then this massive flood will consume everything in its path, including a home. It is a devastating occurrence that has the potential to cause severe damage and loss of life. It acts as a reminder of the force that nature possesses, as well as the significance of taking precautions and having a plan of action in the event of a natural disaster. This is just insane. What you're looking at is actually happening. The whole house is floating in the flood as if it's a paper boat. In this hypothetical, the water is so strong that it can carry away even a huge structure like a house during a devastating flood. The force of the rising floodwaters would be too great to withstand in such a situation. It's conceivable that as the house begins to float downstream with the current, it will come into contact with other floating objects, including other houses, which might result in catastrophic devastation. Anything in the way of the flood, from automobiles and trees to animals and humans, would be consumed. The power of the water would be sufficient to destroy structures and knock down trees, causing widespread devastation. Those caught in the flood would be in a terrible and potentially fatal position. It would be impossible to swim against the current, and anyone who may make it to higher land will still have a long road to recovery. Hey, that's all we have for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all of our latest uploads. Thanks for watching.